skull to your left, by the way, Joseph.
Oh, we're about to record in... Okay, welcome back to my channel. Today I have Joseph and Raine. Oh, I forgot. Ahava. Yeah. So we have a really interesting talk we're going to talk about, and I'm going to let Joseph take over and explain what we're going to be discussing. And I hope you guys enjoy it. Get your pen, get a pad, take some notes, and let's get to it.
So this is going to be based on the Gnostic framework and cosmology. I do not accept the New Testament as a legitimate document. I think it's a fraudulent document, so I completely reject it. I do, however, accept the Gnostic Gospels as a workable cosmology and framework. It's highly adaptable to Luciferian thought, and it just makes much more sense to me. So without further ado, I will begin. And this is, for the sake of time, I'm going to condense this Gnostic talk. So in the beginning, Pistis Sophia was ashamed of her new son that she had birthed. So she placed him in a cloud to conceal his deformity and his ugliness. Her mistake, and she called that mistake Yaldabaoth. Now, Yaldabaoth in Gnostic, for better sake of any other terms, would be the Christian God, would be the Abrahamic God, would be Yaldabaoth. He is depicted as a large serpent dragon with a lion's head. So Yaldabaoth found unity in thoughtlessness and began to begot ruling authorities, Archons. This provoked the process of contraction. Like centrifugal ripples on a liquid surface, this contraction created 10 Sephiroth, or 10 spheres. And these are the ruling heavenly crowns placed over each sphere in order. The first Archon's name is Athoth. The second is Hormus, or the Eye of Flame. The third Archon is Kali Lumbri. The fourth is Yabel. The fifth is Sabaoth. The sixth is Cain, the sun, or the black sun. The seventh is Aval, or Avel, or Abel. The eighth is Abrasim. The ninth is Yobel. The 10th is Armukiel. The 11th is Melchior Adonai. And the 12th is Belial. Now, you guys might recognize that name. That is another name for Belial. Belial is a crowned ruling authority over the earth and ruling authority over the depths of the abyss. He rules over the forge of the firebrand. Now, what that means, this is what I really wanted to get into. This is the meat and potatoes of this discussion. That would there's connecting lore that Belial is Tubal-Qayin. So Tubal-Qayin is known as the smith, the artisan that with his striking hammer smashes on the anvil of eternal night and begets divine sparks. Now, when we get into the clip off, it gets highly convoluted and very theoretical. Now, to make the clip off practical, we are the klipot. We are the shells. We are the vessels that endured. So for the priests and priestesses of Belial or Belial, he gives a portion of his energy to create us. So he struck the anvil and put the divine sparks in the vessels. We are the klipot, or the vessels that endured. Do you guys have anything to add to that, or any thoughts or questions?
But Tubal Cain was a human being, right? Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Well,
Myth.
it's not in the Gnostic text that Tubal-Cain is Belial, but some people want to connect Tubal-Cain with Belial, but it's conflicting because Belial says to have never taken flesh. So this is all speculatory. As seekers, we're always trying to discover the truth. But people don't know that Belial is a crowned Archon. They know that, yeah, he's the Lord of the earth. He's called the Lord of the earth, but he is a crowned authority in the upper Empyrean heights. He has authority in the highest of heights and the lowest of depths.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Raine?
well.
Go ahead, Raine.
Okay, I have a few things to say. I'm going to try to be as coherent as I possibly can and not let this get derailed. But first of all, I want to say it was interesting that you mentioned connecting Belial to Tubal-Cain in regards to the hammer and the forge, just because in my experience, Belial is, in a sense, very similar to Samael in the sense of being both a earth spirit and also a fire spirit, similar in the way that a volcano is. And I would also like to point out that obviously Tubal-Cain, descendant of Cain, and Cain shares many correspondences and many of the same attributions as Belial.
Mm-hmm.
And that also, even though Tubal-Cain was said to have been a human, I would like to point out I cannot for the life of me remember which school of Kabbalistic thought that this comes from, but in at least one school of Kabbalistic thought, Tubal-Cain is actually the father of Asmodeus, because that's one belief, or that's one bit of lore about the creation of Asmodeus, is that he was the offspring of Tubal-Cain and Nema, which
Wow. Yeah.
Nema in the general crowd of the people who are going to be listening to this. Nema is typically more well known than Tubal-Cain is, but most people do not know anything biblical about Nema because, well, let's be real. Even though a lot of people like to joke that it's like, yeah, we're left-hand path and whatnot, but we know the Bible better than the Christians do. But at the same time, not many people know that Nema is actually a biblical figure and was also said to have been a human.
Yeah, Noah's wife, right?
Yes. Well, they hide that fact. The church completely covers over that the fact that Nama was Noah's wife. And Tubal-Cain
Right.
and Nama are brothers. That they're brothers and sisters.
Well,
Brothers
and when you
sisters.
look at different translations of the Torah or the Old Testament, in regards to tracing down the ancestry of certain figures, it gets a bit convoluted, and you'll see some contradictions as to whether or not Noah himself was a descendant of Cain or a descendant of Seth. The more popular belief, the one that circulates more, is that he was a descendant of Seth, not Cain, but there are actually cases to be made that Noah could have been a descendant of Cain. So I'd like to point that out. But what you said in regards to Belial being an Archon, that, of course, I still have a little bit of a polarized dualistic bias in regards to what you just said. And
Well, a lot of people.
it's not an easy
Archon is
thing
the
to
third word.
it's not an easy thing to swallow, but it does overlap with Belial being most well known by most people in LHP circles as an earth spirit.
Mhm.
And what you said about the anvil, as I said, it ties into the whole fire thing because, well, what people don't understand is that if something is primarily an earth spirit and heavily earthbound, it has an intrinsic connection to all of the 4 or 5 base elements: earth, wind, water, fire. And the best way I can explain it is by think of a volcano. Think of what volcanic eruptions do. Volcanic eruptions obviously are connected to the earth, but they have effects on the ocean. They have effects on
The air, the atmosphere.
the air. They have a volcano basically. I almost don't like to differentiate the earth from wind, water, and fire because the earth is kind of what the earth has an intrinsic effect on all of those other elements and they work together in harmony. I'm kind of at a point where I don't even like to necessarily make a differentiation because they are all different pieces of the same thing and
Well,
whatnot.
theoretically, the Earth is placed over the abyss. So the Earth is the gateway to the chthonic, the hell realms. It's placed directly over the abyss. The abyss. So if you look at the reality maps, you have Malkut, and then you have Doth right below the first triad, which is, in my eyes, the wrong placement. I think Doth is in the first lower triad, right in between Yesod and Malkuth. That's just, I mean, if we
And
look at it through human eyes and through our vantage point, that would be more realistic.
well, okay, I intuitively agree with that, but I think it's more complicated than that because I believe that Doth actually is between or underneath every look at the totality of the tree, right?
Mhm.
And the reason that you know how a lot of people refer to Doth as a pseudo Cliffa or a pseudo Sephira,
Yeah.
and in models the little circle that's drawn for the sphere has a little dotted line.
Mhm.
I think that is because there is a Dothic element that permeates the entirety of the Kabbalistic trees, so to
So,
say.
so would you say the tree of life and the tree of death are the same tree? That the tree of death is the roots of the tree of life, or would you say it's the backside of the tree, or completely separate trees?
Mm, none of those, actually. Let's make this more simple and think of a literal, physical, organic tree that you see growing
Mhm.
somewhere. Have you ever noticed that some trees can have multiple trunks that kind of are connected at one point, but at one point they diverge?
Yes, I've seen that.
That's the best way I can describe it. And, if you don't see at the bottom, at the base, where they're connected and where those trunks diverge, and you don't see the whole picture, you can easily interpret them as different trees or separate trees. But I personally am of the belief that it's more along the lines of because they can seem to mirror each other because every Cliffa has its corresponding Sephira and whatnot. So look at it as kind of one tree that diverges into two trunks, and it's kind of symmetrical, but the middle pillar of each of them at one point is the same trunk. That's how I would look at it, basically.
So like
So,
trunk
sorry,
related to two. Kind of like
yeah, that's
like
it.
yeah.
So there's two schools of thought when it comes to the klipot. Um, there's the traditional Orthodox Jewish school of thought where they say the klipot is the vessels that did not endure. When the sparks flew from the forge, they went into the vessel, but they could not contain the divine spark, so it broke. The clippers fell
Yes.
down the tree, and they became divine waste. That's what the traditional Kabbalists think.
The
Uh,
excrement of God.
yeah, the waste of God, or the backside, the reverse. But Luciferians or chaos Gnostics are of the belief that, and this is the more realistic view, that the klipot is the shadow side of the Sephiroth. It's I think they're all the same spheres, but you just have a backside and a front side, just like the confounding angels, uh, uh, Asmodee and Raphael, Belial and Michael. They're connected. They're heavily connected, almost like they're this. I don't want to say they're the same being because people will be calling for my head in the morning, but they're heavily connected to each other. So that would mean that the Klipot and the Sephiroth are connected in some way. Do you believe
Oh,
that they're the shadows, or would you say it was the waste, Aldoria? In your opinion,
I mean, waste is such a
it's
it's that
hard,
word.
right?
Yeah, it's like it's
It's an
not a
oxymoron. Divine waste. What?
divine waste. um, I believe that it's shall like just how the Citra are kind of. Am I cutting out?
No, you're good.
Okay, yeah. I believe that it's that they're the same, but it's just the I don't want to say opposite, but like the shadow. It's the shadow side,
Agreed.
and you can't just be all one thing. You can't just be all light. It doesn't work, and no matter what, the divine spark split. It split because it couldn't just be all one thing in the end. Um, yeah. So, and I do agree with these beings being heavily interchangeable. Like there are so many like even working with Lucifer and Michael, I found a lot of similarities in both of them. Or like even working with Lucifuge and Lucifer, I found a lot of quality. There is some kind of connection between a lot of these spirits. Um, but I have not worked with a lot of archangels, only a couple of them, so I can't say any more similarities to that. But yeah.
Well, Lorraine just the other night summoned Belial and Mikhail together. I don't know if she wants to share a little bit about that, but I was just having a conversation the other night with J.S. Garrett, and he said something extremely profound. And this will completely fly in the face of the dogmatic. This will transcend the duality for people that are on one side or the other. He said that he cannot tell the difference between a demonic king and an archangel. So
Hmm.
technically, they're all demons. So
Hmm.
yes. I was actually about to mention that. You weren't sure how much I wanted to say about that, but I was actually going to segue into that
Cool.
very recently I did actually, because I felt compelled to, and I believed I needed to for quite a long time, but even now there is a polarized, dualistic, 666 kill God type of tendency in me. And as much as I knew the necessity of trying hard to transcend duality and knowing that I needed to understand both sides in a way that's more than just theoretical, I did invoke Belial and Michael together. And I'm not going to say that they're the same, but I will say that it really caught me off guard how almost seamless and how perfectly the energies actually mix together. Like, I'm going to say that in a sense, it was actually almost creepy how well they got along. Because I did not think that it would be easy. And I believe there was a chance that I could fail in calling upon them both, invoking both of them into me at the same time. But I came to a realization that Belial and Michael actually agree with each other on a lot of shit. They don't necessarily agree on, okay, let me just say, they can agree what the problem is with something. They can agree what is wrong with something. They can agree on what aspect of something that's wrong needs to be addressed. And they can agree with each other on what the goal should be, but they will bump heads in regards to the approach
Of how to fix the
and
problem. Right.
of how to fix the problem. Yes.
That makes
Yes.
sense.
Because in my experiences with Belial, I have very largely experienced him as a literal, okay, I don't want to say literal, but think of the whole cartoon shoulder devil, shoulder angel thing.
Hmm.
And the way that I interface with him, because I know that he's not like literally a shoulder devil just popping up on my shoulder, because I have done so much work with him that, and because I've allowed him to, that he's basically bonded to my aura. But he seems to mostly, I don't know, 50 to 75% of the time, like to present himself as a shoulder devil. Not like literally with horns and red and whatnot. That's not how he manifests, but he'll pop up on my shoulder. And there have been a few occasions where I was debating and contemplating certain things, and Michael did indeed pop up on the other shoulder. Belial and Michael is the shoulder devil and shoulder angel, basically. And they would agree with each other on something that needs to be addressed or something that needs to be done, and seem to argue with each other across my shoulders. But the way that they did this made me wonder if the debate or if the conflict, it made me wonder how real the actual conflict and disagreement was, because it made me wonder if it was less about me picking a side between them and more me hearing discourse between them and coming to my own conclusions and wondering what the deeper, more esoteric meaning of the exchange between them would be. And I actually want to use this to segue into something that you, Joseph, said earlier about the New Testament.
Mhm.
Because I believe that the New Testament, unlike the Old Testament, which is basically heavily edited with a lot of deleted scenes version of the Torah, because I actually want to bring Christ into this.
Okay.
The reason I want to bring Christ into this is because when it's explaining the crucifixion, there were two people next to Christ that were being crucified, which
You have to
probably
clarify what Christ you're talking about, Raine. Are you talking about the Gnostic Christos Lucifer? Are you talking about the torn and ragged Nazarene? Or are you talking about the zombie king, slave god representative? There's a bunch of different egregores to that being. Which one
you
are you
are
referring?
correct. Yes, you are correct. And I think the answer will explain itself to you with what I'm about to say, actually, which is that when the crucifixion is described, Christ is on a cross between two people, right?
I see where you're going. Go ahead.
Yes. One of them was a thief and a complete sinner,
Was
and
blood.
just someone horrible. And the other one next to him was someone innocent who was being wrongly crucified.
Was Michael, yeah.
Well, look at it Kabbalistically. Christ was the middle pillar.
hmm
The two people being crucified next to him, you have mercy and severity.
And when you reconcile those two forces, Belial and Michael, you have the Gnostic Christos Lucifer, the morning star.
Yes,
Bravo.
exactly.
See, I told you this is going to go quick. Go ahead, Lorraine.
Wait,
Finish your
hold it
thought.
here. Let's start
Wrap
it.
it up.
Continue. Hold on 1 second.